This is Ecclesiastes chapter 37 and verse 27. My son, prove thy soul in thy life, and see what is evil for it, and give not that unto it. For all things are not profitable for all men, neither hath every soul pleasure in everything. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word, and all truth and in sincerity. All right, I'd like to go into a lesson inspired by this, all right, as well as 2 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, going into proving thine own soul, and one of the key points in this precept in particular is all things are not profitable to all men. One thing we're learning through this journey, Lord willing, we be a part of that number, all right, is that what the Lord did was he gave us a perfect punishment as sons of God, and that is to be a servant to your servants, all right, because we must understand through the Spirit, Lord willing, we be a part of that number, that rulers have to have a certain level of temperance and discipline. And a part of that is being able to examine yourself and understand what's good and profitable for your soul and what isn't, and having that honest look at what works for you and what doesn't work for you, because it may be lawful, but it may not be expedient for you on a personal note. All right, this is 2 Corinthians 13 and 5. It says, examine yourselves, whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves, how that Yahweh Shai HaMashiach is in you, except ye be reprobates. And when you get this Greek word for examine, is pyradzo or piradzo, and it says to try whether a thing can be done, to attempt, endeavor, to try, make trial of, test, for the purpose of ascertaining his quality or what he thinks or how he will behave himself. All right. And we have to, through the Spirit, be very conscious of what works for us through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shai. All right. Within the realm of the law, because all things might be lawful concerning what the Lord allows within the law, but it may not necessarily be productive and expedient for you. And that's why proving your own soul is important. There's, on a personal note, speaking as a man, there's two major facets to this journey through the Spirit. One of them is proving your own soul and finding out what works for you through the Spirit. And another important facet of this journey is finding out how you fit within the body of Hamashiach. Finding your voice, so to speak, and what it is that is an asset to the ministry through the Spirit. Those are two major parts of this journey, if you will. And a big part of it is being able to understand what is expedient for you. All right. Because everything isn't expedient. All right. I want to get that word real quick, but I'll read the precept first. All right. This is 1 Corinthians 6. And I'm going to jump down to 11. And such were some of you, but ye are washed, but ye are sanctified, but ye are justified in the name of the Lord Yahweh Shai and by the Spirit of our power. All things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. All right. And this takes me to a term, that is mentioned in the scriptures. The term is temperance. All right. And temperance ultimately goes into self-discipline or a level of discipline, roughly paraphrasing. All right. And this journey, by default teaches you discipline. The law in itself, and practicing in the law in itself teaches you by default a level of discipline, but within that, you still have to examine yourself, because even within the realms of what's lawful, it may not necessarily be expedient for you. And this is why understanding yourselves and proving your own soul is important. As a small example, it may be lawful to have more than one woman, but it may not be expedient for your temperament. You may not have the type of patience that is required to balance that type of situation out within the war that we're a part of. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. That is an example of something that may be lawful, but not necessarily expedient, depending on your temperament and your own qualities. And you have to examine yourself to determine that. I always make that analogy of, the Lord has made us as a nation of people, a nation of kings. But every king doesn't have the same qualities. Every king doesn't have the same temperament. We've seen that throughout history. You have certain rulers that have a different type of temperament compared to the next ruler. Marcus Aurelius and his qualities are completely different from a guy like Commodus. And you have to prove your own soul to determine what actually works for you through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And that's a journey between you and Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And that's speaking as a man, that's one of the most important parts of this journey, if not the biggest part of this journey, is the journey that you have to take with yourself through this truth. Because you don't make it on another man's merit. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. When the scriptures describe that straight gate, all right, when you deal with that straight gate, it's a single file line. All right, real quick, this is 2 Esdras 7:3. And I said, speak on my power. Then said he unto me, the sea is set in a wide place, that it might be deep and great. But put the case the entrance were narrow like a river. Who then could go into the sea to look upon it and to rule it if he went not through the narrow? How could he come into the broad? And I always think about this precept because, again, you have a man in front of you, you have a man behind you, but you have to take the steps yourself. And the moment you understand this truth and the Lord has graced you with that mercy, you begin a long journey through the spirit. And a big part of that journey is you versus you. And that's a big part of this journey through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And that's built into the journey, again, to refine those rulers of the kingdom to come. In this world, we were taught intemperance, a lack of discipline. We were taught to allow our body to be the master and our minds to be the slave. Well, once the Lord has washed our minds, Lord willing, we be a part of that number through the spirit of regeneration or the washing of being reborn, the washing through the word. Your mind is now, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, able to mortify your members through the spirit of the Lord. Meaning at this point, your mind becomes the master and your body has to be subject unto that will. And Lord willing, that will is a part of Yahweh Shem Yahushai's will. That will is Yahweh Shem Yahushai's will, that you may be meat for the master's use. But through that journey, there's a process of learning what works for you and what doesn't. Learning within the laws of things that are expedient, what works for you and what doesn't. What are your assets? What are your strengths and your weaknesses within the ministry? Just like in the ancient world, a ruler had to be very self-aware of what they were good at and what they weren't good at. And the things that they weren't good at, they would have advisors. They would have people there that were experts in that. And even within the body, you see that. Whatever your strength is, whatever your weakness is, there's a brother to compliment. All right, real quick. This is Galatians chapter 4 and verse 1. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. Even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. But when the fullness of the time was come, Yahushua sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. So the grace that is shared through Yahushua's sacrifice allows us to continue to serve the Lord to the best of our ability and, Lord willing, improve as we journey through this truth. And a huge part of that is being able to be self-aware enough to understand what works for you and what doesn't. Within the realm of the law, you can use drinking as an example. While drinking may be lawful, it may not be expedient for you. You have to examine yourself and be able to look at it and determine what works for you within the realm of the law. And that's you having a honest conversation with yourself through the Spirit as Lord willing, the judge of the kingdom to come. All right, real quick. And that's why I always think about how the Lord made us servants to our servants. Lord willing, we be a part of that number, because it's the perfect punishment for a nation of people that were meant to rule, but that abused that position. So now we have all the responsibility and none of those tangible rewards or tangible privileges that come with being the chosen nation of people or the rulers of the world to come. Even though we're heirs right now, we're under tutors and governors. And your life, how the Lord has fashioned your life in Babylon the Great as we approach the end of this age, is a big part of the tutors and governors. Because how the Lord has fashioned your life allows you the ability to learn and grow from those experiences as you apply this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And through that, you start to understand what works for you and what doesn't within the confines of the law. All right. And every brother is different. Takes me back to a conversation that happened off camera where an elder asked brothers, what makes us all brothers? What makes us all brothers as Israelites? What makes us all brothers? And the short story, getting straight to the point, says we all have the same Father. And what the elder was bringing out is that every brother in their own sense is unique. We're still all sons of Jacob, but you are unique in the way the Lord has fashioned you, your qualities. And in order for you to know that, you have to examine yourself. You have to prove your own soul. You have brothers that can't deal with strong drink. They rather deal with wine. You have brothers that could deal with both. You have brothers that drink in seasons. You have brothers that don't drink at all unless it's the Passover or occasionally have some wine. You have brothers that can deal with more than one woman. You have brothers that can't. You have brothers that only eat meat during the Passover. You have brothers that, stick to a strict diet unless it's the Passover. You have other brothers that move differently within the confines of the law. You have to examine yourself as a prince of the power and determine and be able to understand how the Lord has fashioned you in this body and what works for you and what doesn't. And that's a journey only you can take with Yahweh Shem Yahushua. That's a personal journey. A brother can give you outside looking in perspective, but you have to examine yourself first and foremost. All right, there's Wisdom of Solomon 6:1. Hear therefore, O ye kings, and understand. Learn ye that be judges of the ends of the earth. And see, a part of this is a perspective. When you understand that the Lord is grooming you to be a ruler in the world to come, it will force you to look at your walk very differently. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. Meaning the Lord is putting you through certain situations to make you better. All right. Not just for yourself, but for everyone around you, especially those in the ministry. And that's why the scriptures talk about he that have journeyed have much experience. And this truth within itself is a journey. There's certain seasons in your life as a man of the Lord, Lord willing, we be a part of that number, where you begin to outgrow certain things that may be lawful for you. There may be a time when you first come into the truth where you want, more than one woman. But then as you mature in the truth, you understand, all right, it may not be necessarily expedient for me right now. And if it is, the Lord will reveal it to me. But at this point, I don't see how it's expedient for me. We're all going through that process through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, man. And that's why proving your own soul and understanding what works for you and what doesn't work for you within the confines of the law is extremely important for your longevity. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And a part of a marathon, because I used to long distance run, is you have to find your pace. And when you find that pace, you can do that all day long. Once you find your pace, you have to find your rhythm within the body. All right. How you contribute. What is your best gift, and present that to the body. And a part of that is proving your own soul. All right. This is Wisdom of Solomon 6:2. Give ear, ye that rule the people, and glory in the multitude of nations. For power is given you of the Lord, and sovereignty from the highest, who shall try your works and search out your counsels. And having this truth is a form of power. All right. Matter of fact, having this truth gives you a level of sovereignty. You know, the truth shall make you free. You know, you're able to see beyond this system. And that is a gift that has been given to you by Yahweh Shema Shah, but we still have to live within this system, which means we always have to go through a constant purging or a mortifying of our members. You know, and I always make this analogy, you know, the men of the Lord go through seasons. You know, within a year, you're going to go through highs and lows. Just like every year, there's a winter, there's a spring. All right, there's a fall, there's a summer. You're going to go through seasons as a man of the Lord. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. And it's all meant to teach you more about this journey, you know, about your relationship with Yahweh Shema Shai. It's meant to teach you a lot of things that really can't be expressed with words. Yet through the Spirit, that's why Yahweh Shah said, ye that endure unto the end. Because if you remain in the process, you'll understand it more and more as we continue toward that great day. Because as the Lord is tearing down the so-called white man and his empire, he's also building up Jacob. And that begins with you. All right, that begins with you. Matter of fact, let's go here. This is Malachi chapter 3, and I'm going to jump down to verse 16. It says, then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name. And they shall be mine, saith the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. All right, if you think about jewels that are made, they're forged in very violent environments, if you will. You know, you think about the purging of gold. It's refined in fire. That's a very violent situation. You know, the pressure that creates the diamonds. It's a very violent environment. It's a very tumultuous environment. Yet it produces the great fruit. And everything that the Lord has put in your situation, your life at this point is meant to purge out the undesirable, the dross, so that light, that jewel that the Lord has planted in you, Lord willing, will shine forth at the end. All right. The Lord is really fashioning, you know, the elect men to be perfect rulers, you know. And one of the most important qualities of a ruler is temperance, you know, discernment, of course, but temperance as well, the ability to be disciplined. All right, real quick, this is Isaiah chapter 13 and 12. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. And that is what the straight gate does if you endure it to the end of the process. If you don't lose patience and you continue to run the race that is set before us, Lord willing, we be a part of that number. Because that's what the Lord is creating. That finished product is a man more precious than fine gold. True rulers in the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. But before you can rule over many things, you have to learn to rule over your own spirit. And that's what this journey is teaching us. And this is why proving your own soul is extremely important. And having that honest conversation with yourself through the spirit to see what's evil for your spirit and not give yourself over into it. You know, because some brothers can deal with women and not get emotional and not get too attached and, you know, lose themselves in it. And some brothers can't. And that may just be for a season, but you have to have the ability to discern where you are and what's going on with your situation through the spirit. And that's a key component of a ruler. Matter of fact, the Wadi Abashim Shai. Let me get this in Ecclesiastes 5. I want to get straight to it, though. I'm going to just go to it. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 5. I believe it's 5. Nope. Ecclesiastes 10. Salakia. This is Ecclesiastes 10 and 16. It says, Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning. Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season, for strength and not for drunkenness. All right, and this journey is teaching us that. You know, that just because we are the children of Israel, we're the chosen people of Yahweh Shema Shai, we still have to be disciplined. We still have to have a level of self-control. Because you have to understand your journey. If you are a ruler right now, your journey on a personal note and your inability to examine yourself could cost a province or a city. The well-being of people, if you are actually in charge of a city or a state or a country, you not being able to be temperate, you not being able to be self-aware, to proving your own soul and knowing what's good for it, could cost a province or a nation. And the Lord has given us these lessons when it's just us being responsible for the little things. And this is why it's important to embrace the journey that is set before us through the Spirit, because ultimately it's for our profiting at the end of the day. And a big part of that is within the law, being able to understand and discern what works for you and what doesn't. You know? So Lord willing, this was edifying with that. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwat, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.